Hello everyone, this is Melton Stewart, and I'm hoping that this conference goes very well, and I do apologize that I cannot be there. There are lots of things going on that that really just basically don't allow me to come, but I am so very sorry because I would love to have been there, and I would like to have met so many of you, or if not every one of you in person that I've been speaking with for a while. So I hope to do that at some point in time. I hope to meet most of you in person, but I do ask your forgiveness that I could not attend this time. Now, instead of telling my story, it's already out there, and frankly, I'm kind of sick of telling it, except that it does at times give us an open door so that other stories can come out. So, my dog is nuzzling me. Okay, baby. But here's, he's gonna lick me. All right, hey Dash. Okay, nope, can't see him. All right, there he is. You wanna see? Okay, there you go, baby. All right, well, like I said, I'm kind of sick of my story. So what I thought I would do is read something to you called What is the Lie? Which I tell people more or less wrote itself. Okay, well, I'm going to begin before my dog disrupts me again. All right, what is the lie? Thousands upon thousands of targeted individuals, better described as falsely accused innocent people, are being illegally used, human trafficked, as techno-chum to feed the growing voracious Orwellian police state. Through legalistic sleight of hand by Homeland Security, this ruse is really to not only bloat the number of perceived terrorists on the watch list, to validate the hypergrowth of unnecessary security overlords, but also to provide unwilling, non-consensual human test subjects for draconian electronic or kinetic weaponry manufacturers to use on them, as well as subjects for unwelcome, covert, invasive technologies forced upon them secretly by complicit medical and high-tech companies that maim, torture, kill to gather data for presumably their stockholders or clients as to the efficacy of these Franken technologies. These techno-terrorists consider citizens' property, damaged or diseased citizens as gold mines, and healthy citizens as worthless unless appropriated for use as guinea pigs. The victims who have been blindsided by this emergent godless capitalism and godless science predation in what will be known as the 21st century dark ages inevitably ponder what the lie could possibly be that is being told to induce neighbors, colleagues, service people, post office workers, utility workers, clergy, law enforcement, nurses, doctors, dentists, military, EMTs, family members, et al., to knowingly conspire to purposely do them grievous harm, even unto death. What has happened to these now counterfeit people, this society, to turn them into sneaky, sociopathic sadists and avaricious and relentless mercenaries? How has this complete devolution of humanity and civilization been accomplished under the noses of almost every country in the world, with no one noticing that civilization is now a complete facade, ready to collapse at any moment into complete anarchy? How did humanity devolve into deriving economic sustenance not from creativity, labor, and production, but from a secret predator versus prey society reminiscent of the Morlock and Eloi in H.G. Wells' Time Machine, where futuristic humanity had split into two factions: the subterranean beasts living underground, out of the light of day, and the beautiful innocent Eloi living on the surface of the earth, who a hapless time traveler from the 19th century London stumbled upon in his travels. To his horror, he found that the Morlock were farming the Eloi, providing food while keeping them ignorant of how to sustain themselves, then violently harvesting several routinely to feed the homo carnivorous Morlock. Under the guise of Homeland Security, aka national security, this is being done with the world's population right now, under the noses of the public, which is largely asleep, though many through self-induced denial, which can be quite aggressively expressed if challenged with facts. This rampant self-denial, this rabid normalcy bias of a dying society, which can be defined as the antithesis of the self-preservation instinct, can manifest as insulting and belittling those trying to warn society of or even portraying them as mad and dangerous and in need of being locked away to get them and their really inconvenient truth out of the public arena as quickly as possible. Those busy dancing on the deck of the Titanic refuse to acknowledge, much less heed, the voices crying in the wilderness, though they are increasing in volume because they are indeed increasing in number, which signifies the spread of this cancer that ultimately endangers all. What is the lie that would make supposedly decent people think that they have a right to help a rogue government illegally and unconstitutionally attack and destroy their innocent neighbors, even with covert, highly advanced weapons of war, directed energy weapons, sonic weapons, such as used in Cuba in 2017? What is the lie that would make supposedly decent people think that they have a right to trample the Constitution, civil and human rights of their innocent neighbors without cause, or that they, not being law enforcement, have any right to be involved at all? What is the lie that would make supposedly decent people think that they have the right to overtly or covertly watch, follow, stalk, harass, report on the daily lives of their innocent neighbors? What is the lie that would make supposedly decent people think that they have a right to spread lies, gossip, false accusations, unfounded accusations, or libel about their innocent neighbors? What is the lie that would make decent people think that they have a right to vandalize the property, vehicles, personal effects, etc. of their innocent neighbors? What is the lie that would make supposed decent people think that they have a right to steal, maim, poison, gut, stab, shoot their beloved pets of their innocent neighbors? What is the lie that would make supposedly decent people think that they have a right to break into the homes of their neighbors and destroy or steal personal items like photo albums, correspondence, irreplaceable souvenirs of the innocent neighbor's life in order to inflict as much emotional damage as possible? What is the lie that would make supposed decent people think that they have a right to participate in coordinated aggressive driving attacks or staged accidents or hit and runs on their innocent neighbors, scaring, injuring, or killing them? What is the lie that would make supposedly decent people think that they have a right to make false reports to law enforcement about their innocent neighbors anytime they can think of a false accusation? What is the lie that would make supposed decent people think that they have the right to make threatening phone calls or send threatening emails or letters to their innocent neighbors? What is the lie that would make supposedly decent people think that they have a right to leave dead and decaying animals on the property of their innocent neighbors? What is the lie that would make supposedly decent people think that they have a right to steal or destroy the postal mail, packages, parcels, registered letters, FOIA or FOIA responses of their innocent neighbors with or without the help of postal workers or private delivery services? What is the lie that would make supposedly decent people think that they have a right to use the personal information of their innocent neighbors to access their bank accounts or credit cards for personal gain? What is the lie that would make supposedly decent people think that they have a right to poison the food or drink with toxins, mold, nanotech, or morgellons of their innocent neighbors, either via break-ins or tampering or with the preparation of restaurant food? What is the lie that would make supposedly decent people think that they have a right to overtly or covertly spray their innocent neighbors or their homes with poisons and noxious chemicals? What is the lie that would make supposedly decent people think that they have a right to use their professional skills and status as service industry personnel, such as car mechanics, plumbers, electricians, banking staff, or public servants, such as city, local officials, to trample the rights of their innocent neighbors by purposely providing sometimes dangerously substandard or blatantly fraudulent services. What is the lie that would make supposedly decent people think that they have the right to abuse the law in their capacity as law enforcement, lawyers, district attorneys, prosecuting attorneys, defense attorneys, judges, clerks, etc.? As a means to slander, set up, falsely incarcerate, oppress, and destroy their innocent neighbors. What is the lie that would make supposedly decent people think that they have a right to use their medical training and positions to not only covertly implant unneeded and unwanted medical chips and other medical devices, but to also sabotage medical tests results, replace correct assessments with false, switch x-rays, MRIs, PET scans to hide the physical damage being done to their innocent neighbors in order to disallow proper care until it's too late, as well as cover up grievous criminal injury and ultimately murder? What is the lie that would make supposedly decent people think that they have a right to use their training as mental health care professionals to lie about their innocent neighbors or clients, imagining being ridiculed, bullied, viciously slandered, unconscionably harassed 24/7, as well as emotionally and physically injured, to include rape and sodomy? What is the lie that would make supposedly decent people think that they have a right to sabotage their innocent neighbor's ability to get and retain a job or career? What is the lie that would make supposedly decent people think that they have a right to monetary and material gain through heinous and criminal abuse of their innocent neighbors? What is the lie that would make supposedly decent people think that they have the moral high ground to viciously exploit and destroy their innocent neighbors through every crime possible, while somehow excusing it with baseless fantasy accusations against their innocent neighbors, whom they have never witnessed do anything wrong, much less depravedly criminal like their own sustained actions? What is the lie that would make supposed decent people think that they can hide their crimes behind treasonous criminal officials and unconstitutional laws forever? What is the lie that would make supposedly decent people think that their heretofore unimaginable crimes of hive-minded depravity will be considered patriotic or heroic, or that they will go down in history as anything but subhuman monsters whose existence was little more than that of a devolved, parasitic, and cannibalistic counterfeit human mutation that was universally reviled and exterminated as soon as possible by an outraged and horrified moral force within humanity proper, which finally awakened to the plight of their innocent neighbors and recognized the nearly completed extinction-level event. So, like I said, this is something that was rolling around in my head and kind of just wrote itself. I hope that people may find it useful. You certainly are welcome to copies of it. I have given it to Allison, and I would be more than happy to send it to anyone who emails me. And I think that's an email that's pretty well known, but it is kams56@me.com, and if you would like a copy, I will be more than happy to send it to you. Like I said, I hope it's of use to anybody who actually wants a copy, and I'm hoping that you may be able to wake up people with this and with many other things that people have written. So I do wish you well, and I personally think that this is going to be exposed and over in the next few months. I am hoping before 2018, but in my heart I really believe it's before 2019, and we're probably 6 months, within 6 months or so of having this exposed, I hope, because we have had some breakthroughs. I've been told by a naval commander that retired naval commander, that he's well aware of what's going on. So that gives me hope, and I ask him to please spread the word among military and retired military, and to remind them of their oaths to protect the country against domestic terrorists as well, domestic enemies. And whoever thinks that this is legal to do, I'm sorry, but the Constitution and all kinds of laws say that no, it's not. And I repeat myself when I say that Marbury versus Madison was a Supreme Court decision that early on challenged whether a law could be passed in the United States or on U.S. territory that actually contradicted the Constitution. Well, the Supreme Court took 10 years to study everything that any of the founders had written to assess their thoughts on this, their intentions. And after 10 years, Marbury versus Madison was decided that any law that was passed that was contrary to the Constitution is void. So all of these directives, rules, regulations, post 9/11 laws that go contrary to the Constitution, they are void. But we just have to now convince people to actually act within the Constitution and stop allowing this to be a post-Constitution America. Because a post-Constitution America is a dead America. It's gone, it's over, and humanity won't come back from it. But I think that basically they picked on the wrong people. And those people are you and me and all of the rest of us. So that's something to tell your children, your grandchildren, is that you turn back the tide that would have destroyed humanity. So you guys have a wonderful conference, and take heart, because so many people are working so very hard, and there are cracks forming in this cover story. So you guys take care. God bless. Love you all. Okay? Bye-bye.
Welcome back. I'm Alfred Leverott Weber, and I'm here today with Karen Melton Stewart, who is a retired National Security Agency NSA analyst. Welcome, Karen.
Hey, it's very nice to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. You know, I recently came across and contacted you because you released an affidavit, and I'd like to read just a portion of the last paragraph in it. Fusion Center personnel have visited several neighbors here who appear to be involved in the continued contract issued by crooks within the NSA to harass, harm, and murder me, to cover up their own crimes and give the fusion centers yet another innocent scapegoat to attack to justify their unjustifiable, parasitic, and anti-American existence. And your affidavit prior to that has a great deal of very specific information. And so I'd like to ask you, for those who are listening for the first time, and for myself really, what exactly are the fusion centers, and what is the nub of the situation that you're addressing in this public affidavit?
Okay, I decided that if they would succeed at killing me, keeping the information that I knew and had found out would not be a good idea. So I created an affidavit to give out to people in case my affidavit could help them in any way, you know, whether I'm alive or whether I'm not. So I wrote it up on February 11th, and I started going on various podcasts and things and reading it so people could see how I came to the conclusion that the fusion centers are the main hub of our torture in most cases. Not all. Sometimes it's military and from the nearest military base. But for the majority of us, I think the fusion center is where it is choreographed from. And I'll give you a very, very short, I hope, very short synopsis of why I apparently became victimized by this. I'd worked at the National Security Agency for 28 years. I ended up doing a 6-month top secret report that helped us when we invaded Iraq. And I was told that my report apparently saved at least 2,000 lives or more, which, of course, I was very happy that that was the case. But my boss, my directorate boss, which is a couple people above, like a branch chief, he decided, why waste putting this woman in for a promotion for her work when I can get my lover promoted with Karen's work. So he basically took a write-up of my work, took my name off of it, submitted it as this other woman's work, her name was Rita, and got her a double promotion. Of course, all the feedback I got was that, oh, well, you didn't make it this time, good luck next time. So, I just went with that. I said, oh, well, that's the way the cookie crumbles. And so within a year or so, I had a promotion board member who figured out the deceit, because she couldn't find a thing in the world the woman had done on my project. She asked me a few questions, and that let me know what had happened. And I tried to go to the Inspector General at NSA to see if he would investigate to see if this was really true. And when I did, all hell broke loose. The people who are guilty basically tried to accuse me of something, which is still a mystery today as to what. Tried to get me fired, and within probably, about 3 years of intensive harassment, they ended up getting me fired 2 years before I could have fully retired. Luckily, I fought and got a partial retirement. And then I ended up being targeted. Well, just before I was fired, I was actually targeted by NSA goons, low-level security goons, who stalked and harassed me using a certain methodology. Well, after they fired me, they left me alone for a while. I did sue them, and then when my lawyer started to dig up stuff they didn't like, then, even though I'd moved to another state, basically NSA went to the Fusion Center and had a contract put on me to stalk and harass me. Now, what is a Fusion Center? All right, after 9/11, the intelligence community was called up before Congress and said, why the heck did this happen? Why weren't you guys on it? And their excuse was, partially was that the Constitution got in their way, which is baloney. And they were saying that the upper echelon intelligence people were not communicating with the lower echelon law enforcement. So they needed centers all over the country in each state and multiple centers to fuse upper information, higher echelon information with lower echelon information, meaning see something, say something, and then it would filter upwards, and somebody in the intelligence community would figure out, was it worth really digging into, or vice versa. People from on high would tell the lower echelon law enforcement, watch out for this, this, and this. So those are the fusion centers. They were created by the FBI. They're under the auspices of the Department of Homeland Security. And there are representatives from all kinds of law enforcement to all kinds of federal and even contractors. So you might have somebody from the IRS, from DEA, from NSA, from CIA, obviously FBI because they're running it. And then you might have people who are basically sheriff's department or police department, or even wildlife people who, out to guard the wildlife from poachers and things like that. So it is a total fusion of information, they think. But what I found out in watching what was happening to me and investigating was that these are the people who basically run the civilian mercenaries who stalk and harass innocent people put on the watch list for other reasons than being suspicious. And there's a multiplicity of reasons. And they're all money-making schemes. And some of them are to serve somebody with connections who wants revenge, to serve somebody who is trying to figure out if a certain weapon works, how does it work, and he needs to be able to test it on human beings, but nobody who is sane would volunteer to have this type of weapon tested on them. So they just, it seems like they either put out a contract on a person for a vendetta, or they may call up and say, in a certain area, let's say North Florida where I was, we need 20 people to test this particular weapon on. So we need you to fabricate dossiers on 20 people to say that they're suspicious people, declare them to be put on the terrorist watch list, then since you've done that, then declare them to not be citizens, not have constitutional rights, not have civil rights, not have human rights, and because the terrorist laws say we can kill terrorists when we find them, it doesn't say how we can kill them. We can drone them, we can hit them with the drone and blow them up, but we can also, in our minds, the way that we interpret it, is that we can take these weapons and hit them with it, whether it's over weeks, months, years, even if it kills them, so what? We're allowed to kill terrorists. So this is the basis of the terrorist watch list scam. And they're hitting people with directed energy weapons. They're hitting people with poisons and gases meant for wartime or battlefield. And they're also basically choreographing car accidents and other types of things like this, and coercing doctors and medical staff to implant people if there's an opportunity, or with a car accident that they create an opportunity to put networks of implants in people and then test them with these implants. And some of the implants are body area networks and cause the people all kinds of horrific pain. They can mimic a disease by tearing down that person's health in a certain way to figure out how to cure it or treat it. Now, I will say that with the biomedical laboratory or biomedical companies, if you're born healthy, it would appear that you're of no value to them. So they don't mind taking your life and destroying it so that they can figure out how to treat certain diseases and make a lot of money on the people born with that type of malady or who contract it somewhere along the way. So the terrorist watch list is a huge scam in that it just is a list of people that the police force and the sheriff's deputies and everybody in authority are told to butt out and let the federal government do what they want to them. So it's horrific.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. That the mind boggles. Now. I would like to ask you some questions from a particular standpoint, because I was not aware that the fusion centers grew out of the events of 9/11, September 11th, 2001. And coincidentally, I'm one of the judges on the 9/11 War Crimes Tribunal, along with Judge Connie Fogel, which was held here in Vancouver, BC, with about 30 witnesses, including Professor James Fetzer and others. And the brunt of the testimony given, and we had testimony from insiders, from experts, was that the events of 9/11 was an elaborately choreographed inside operation by the deep state of the United States. And we even had a whistleblower who had witnessed preparations for 9/11 inside the U.S. as early as 1971, that is 30 years prior to 2001, they were setting up that operation. And the Twin Towers were actually built for the operation. They were owned by the Rockefeller brothers. So this appears like it's one of those cases where what the outside political scientists would say is directed energy weapon fascism designed and brought on purpose. One creates a false flag operation like 9/11 in order to create the fusion centers in order to target dissidents and others within the population on a long-term basis. And so that would be my analysis as a judge of the 9/11 War Crimes Tribunal, which was a tribunal of conscience.
I can give you a piece of information that very briefly.
Sure.
2 days after 9/11, when I walked into NSA to start my work, because they closed down NSA for 2 days, I walked into NSA and I was on my way to my office when I came across 2 or 3 women trying to comfort a man probably in his early 40s. He was crying, and he was crying like a baby. I mean, very heavy sobs. I figured, of course, he had lost a loved one or friends in 9/11. I started to pass by him, and he started to say things like, nobody had to die. And that stopped me in my tracks. He kept saying, nobody had to die. We had all the information we needed to stop it, but the management wouldn't let us report it. They wouldn't let us warn people. They told us to shut the hell up or else. They told us if we tried to report it, we would be arrested for trying to basically tell secrets, and I have, and then I couldn't believe it. The man kept saying that over and over again, and finally he did go back to his office, and I waited to see what was going to be said, and all I saw on the TV was utter and total baloney in regard to us not knowing a thing about it. And I said, well, how could this man say that my section of NSA knew all about it, but we were forbidden to report it? Now, several years later, I ran into a man who happened to have worked in that same section, and without knowing I had spoken to the first gentleman, he repeated the same story. And he became a targeted individual, and he got fired from NSA because he tried over and over and over again to warn people. He rewrote his reports thinking they just weren't smart enough to understand the danger that he was describing to them, so he would rewrite them. And so finally, they told him to shut the hell up, and they declared him to be insane, declared him to be obsessed with kamikaze planes, and fired him. And then they stalked and harassed him for a decade, keeping him from working any kind of decent job. I mean, the man was a polyglot. He spoke 13, 14 different languages and dialects. You don't run into that. That's a gold mine, okay? But they fired him and kept him in poverty for a decade and came to him after that, NSA security, and said, if you shut the hell up, we'll let you have a life. If you say a word, we'll destroy it. And I know the man's name, and I can give it to you.
Yeah.
In private.
Yeah, sure. And that's entirely consistent with the testimony that we received at the 9/11 War Crimes Tribunal. And it seems to me that if the fusion centers, in fact, grew out of that paradigm, the fusion centers themselves are an institutionalization and a continuation of state of directed energy state terror, directed at targeted the targeted population, the targeted civilian population, either be they government employees, be they members of the civilian population, be they members of the Fourth Estate, be they people that are considered to be political dissidents or social dissidents, whatever criteria they have for identifying people that are to be targeted by this new remote torture or directed weapons technology. Is that reasonable, do you think?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, you're looking at a lot of random people Why are you looking at a lot of random people? Well, because they need subjects to test the weapons on, and they don't care who it is. They may say, hey, we need 20% Hispanics, 10% Oriental, give us 40% Caucasians, blah, blah, blah. They don't care. They just want something made up about someone to throw them on the watch list so that they can fulfill their quota. Now, when you have a lot of random people, you can then take dissidents, human rights activists, animal rights activists, whistleblowers, and then you can sprinkle them among all these random people. And then when somebody says, hey, I was put on this watch list because I'm a whistleblower, and then they look at other people saying, well, how come all these other people are saying that they were put on the watch list wrongfully, illegally, and this guy's a bus driver, that guy's a teacher, so your story doesn't hold water, because why are they targeting, supposedly targeting all these random people? So, we don't believe that as being valid. So they just sprinkle these people with really inconvenient people and get rid of them.
Now, so you're cognizant of the NSA, and you've been at the receiving end of the fusion centers. If we move beyond using terms like deep state, who are the parties in interest that's keeping this entity going? Just to use perhaps over-hackneyed terms, but at least from my perspective, valid terms, unconstitutional, unlawful, and genocidal entity going. Who are they that they can keep going?
Well, first and foremost, they will take an order. They will put a hit on anybody that someone from a federal agency says is inconvenient. I spoke to a woman who worked for the IRS, and she found some things going on there that were not ethical and perhaps were illegal. And she tried to get that corrected, and her boss reported her as a terrorist. So instead of taking care of the problem, he got rid of the complainer. So any federal agency can do that to any of their employees. Plus, you do have contractors that are very deeply involved in this as well. Many are perpetrators, but they also are the ones, let's say so-and-so has a brand new directed energy device, or so-and-so has a new poison. He wants to see if it works only on redheads, because he's designed it only for redheads. So then he puts an order into a particular fusion center and says, I need you to basically declare 100 redheads to be terrorists, so I can hit them with this gas and see what the heck it does. How quickly does it disable them? How quickly does it kill them? How does it kill them? Does it affect anybody near them who's not redheaded? This is rather outrageous, but you get what I'm saying.
Yeah. Now, just to be clear, is that a hypothetical example that you're making up with the redhead right now?
Yes. Yes.
Oh, okay. I didn't know if that was. Okay.
Yes, that's hypothetical based on the fact that I have been told by certain victims that it appears that their DNA has been targeted because they've been hit with poisons in a setting where there are many people and almost no one is affected. But one woman has told me that in her lifetime of being hit with poisons and gases, she's actually had people who were genetically similar die.
Right.
When she almost died.
Right. So what would be a non-hypothetical example, a real example of that? What would be the class? Just so that people can get an idea of what these fusion centers are doing.
Well,
is it like, was it ethnic, or was it gender, or what was it?
Ethnicity is what I'm thinking about, having spoken to many people. There are people who have related to me that people around them were not affected except if they were family. So that was a particular strain of DNA for that particular family. There's a gentleman that who related to me. He had been I think he was an administrator at a high school, and this was in the Deep South, and he had noticed years ago, decades ago, that in order to circumvent the order to basically allow blacks and whites in the same classroom, what his school was doing was declaring anybody who wasn't Caucasian to be mentally unfit, to be retarded, and they were resegregating the schools by using false accusations that these non-Caucasian children were retarded. So he was hit with poisons and gases, and he relates to me that he would get in his car and get deathly ill when his wife seated next to him would be perfectly fine. So that was DNA-specific poison they were using on him.
Now, are there no oversights over the fusion centers? Are they just operating like a law unto themselves?
Well, I've seen articles about the fact that the fusion centers have been absolutely, totally not forthcoming with how they're spending the money. Now, if you are a fusion center and you say, we have 100 people in this town that are suspicious and they might be dangerous, you're going to get a lot less money than a fusion center that says we have about 10,000 people in this town that are suspicious and we need money to keep up with them. So they're making money. The more people they dump on the watch list, and nobody is looking at why. I mean, in 2013, President Obama said, we're going to drop the probable cause. We don't even have to have probable cause to put somebody on the terrorist watch list. It's just going to be basically, and he didn't say this, but I'm interpreting it as a wink and a nod. All you had to have was 2 or 3 people repeat the same story. And of course, the person who's being accused of whatever doesn't have the right to confront his accuser or know what his accuser is saying about him. Now, in the FISA court, you might go up and say, okay, I'm FBI, and I think Bill Jones is a terrorist because he speaks to people in Iran, 10 times a week. And so the judge says, oh, okay, that sounds suspicious, so we'll give you a warrant, But what the FBI is supposed to do, since Bill Jones is not going to know that he's being accused, they're supposed to give information that might mitigate what's going on there. Let's say Bill Jones, he sells Iranian or Persian carpets for a living. Well, maybe he would be on the phone 10 times with somebody in Iran talking about rugs. But the FBI is supposed to tell the judges that. But they have been caught very often not giving the judges the mitigating circumstances for why they're insisting that that person be put on the terrorist watch list. So that is their duty, but they're not doing it. And there's several articles that have said they're not doing it.
So that the fusion centers and the FBI as oversight agencies have essentially morphed into perpetrator agencies.
Oh, they absolutely are. Absolutely. I mean, what I call them is Trojan horses, because through this fake and fraud terrorist watch list, they're getting rid of anyone who is patriotic. If you're a constitutionalist, you're out of here, because that goes against what they want to bring forth, which is a new world order socialist state. And George Soros in 2010 was quoted as saying that in order for the new world order, one world government to succeed, the United States was the last impediment, and the United States had to be brought down. And those were his words.
Well, now, you just used several buzzwords that appear in the electoral political dialogue in the United States. Words like socialist, okay? One could say that a candidate like Bernie Sanders is really a social democrat and not really a socialist, strictly. What is the connection in your mind between this deep state, New World Order infiltration in the fusion centers and the political parties in the United States? Is there a connection there, or there seem to be so many movements in the U.S. that are directed toward an analysis of the United States in a dire position? You know, Antifa, the right-wing version of Antifa, whatever that is. You know,
Well, I think you've got adherents to the notion that a one world government would stop all wars and it would make everything just wonderful, peachy keen, et cetera, et cetera. You've got adherents that are in both parties because both parties swing, left and right. So you may have somebody in the American Democratic Party who doesn't see things all that much differently than somebody who's in the right wing. They may be much closer than you think. And I don't know, when you get to the extremes of both right and left, to me, it's almost as if you are approaching the ideology from, if you look at a clock and you say that fascism on a clock would be 11:29, and then Marxist socialism would be 11:32, they're not that far apart anymore because they've gone so far to the extreme. And I think both would fit into the notion of trying to rein in everything under a one world government because they just feel like there would be no more wars and things would get solved so much better and so much more quickly, when I don't think that's the case personally. So I think some of this fascism and Marxism, they're kind of morphing into, in my opinion, a similar monster. Basically it just wants to take away your rights, and liberty is an obscene word. I mean, in communist China, the word I understand for liberty actually translates to chaos. So that's their take on liberty. So when the Chinese hear us talking about freedom and liberty, they hear us saying chaos. And in their society, of course, that doesn't translate well at all, because with that number of people, you have to have strict control, or things get out of hand very quickly. You don't get the food that you need for that number of people. You get strife and things that can get out of hand very quickly. So it's a matter of perspective.
Right. Now, it seems if this came out of the 9/11 false flag operation, it seems that there were many deep structural institutions behind 9/11 that we found that go back to institutions like the Bilderbergers, the Rothschild, Rockefeller complex, all of those institutions that were leading toward a new world order, and that 9/11 was, its purpose was to accelerate the war on terror and to bring the war on terror home and bring an atmosphere of the new world order to the United States, I guess through the Fusion Center, by breaking down a democratic lifestyle in the United States by permitting this targeting, this paragovernmental targeting against individuals. Is that what you see, or something like that?
The whole thing is so orchestrated. I mean, for the longest time, the United States was pretty much safe, because look at the Atlantic Ocean, the Pacific Ocean. Any enemy coming to conquer us, we'd know about it right away, and it would take them forever to get here. It's incredible to me that we basically went over to the Middle East, stirred up trouble, and then said, oh, those people hate us, and we're surprised. And then the supposed attack, this attack supposedly by these people, and they were saying, well, now, it's proven, and these people hate us, and we've got to, be strong. We've got to defend ourselves. And then what do? They import all these Muslims into the United States. Well, they're scapegoats, So they're saying, oh, well, there are all these Muslims all over the United States now. And so, and then they say, and these people hate us. But don't be anti-Muslim, because that's not fair, because there's only, a few of them who hate us. But we do need the fusion centers to make sure that you're safe now. I mean, it's all gibberish. It's all doublespeak,
Yeah.
and it's all a setup. And then they're saying, basically, trust us. You just give us your liberty. Trust us. We're going to keep an eye on you. We're going to invade your privacy, but it's okay. It's all for your good, your own self-defense. And then, of course, you give more and more and more of your freedom away, so that you're not free. You're not free. And what did Benjamin Franklin, one of our founding fathers, said, that anyone who would give up a little bit of freedom for a little bit of security will get neither and deserve neither. And he was right.
Right. So the U.S. seems to be now in the position of being the target of what many people have identified as the Kalergi plan, which you were just identifying, where they have where the national security state itself created an event like 9/11 of synthetic terror, of state synthetic terror, around a perceived Islamic invasion, which was false. And through those then invented laws like the Patriot Act, which have decimated the constitutional and civil liberties and civil rights order, and weaponized it through the fusion centers.
I mean, the laws are clear, but nobody is standing up and saying, no, this isn't constitutional. I mean, I've harped on Marbury versus Madison, Supreme Court decision that says no law that goes contrary to the Constitution is valid. And Shelby versus Norton, which came later as a Supreme Court decision, says that if you follow an invalid law, let's say somebody in your area passes a law that anybody wearing blue socks can be executed, and you go out and execute that person. Well, that is totally against the Constitution, and you are not protected by the fact that a law said you could execute them. You will be held responsible, because that is life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and you just murdered someone. So what we're in right now in the United States, and maybe in other countries too, is people are thinking we're in a post-constitutional era, and they are not standing up and saying, no, that's not constitutional, that's not legal, we won't do that. They're having people with fusion center badges and Homeland Security badges come and show them and say, I need you to go over to your neighbor's property at 3 a.m. and slit his tires, because it's for God and country, and people are doing it.
Now, how does that relate to two things? How does that relate to the current federal administration under President Trump, stating that he's for the Constitution and for constitutional government? How is it that is going to cease? Is the current presidency of Trump, is he in aid of the fusion centers or against them, or even aware of them?
Well, we're trying to get word to him. We've been trying to get word to him since he ran for office that abuses are going on, and there are certain overt overtures we've made, and there are certain behind the scenes overtures that we've made, and we are very hopeful that he understands what's going on. So I'm not going to get into, some of the things behind the scenes that are delicate, but the push now to say that we need to make sure laws are constitutional will help us. Again, I referred to you to two Supreme Court decisions that we've got to get back to, and
Okay.
right now the FISA, well, not the FISA, I'm sorry, but legislators are going to be voting as to whether to keep I think it's 215 in the Patriot Act, whether to keep that and other parts of it going, because they have to be revoted on. You cannot declare a state of emergency and just keep it forever. You can't. That's not the nature of the beast. A state of emergency is for a limited time period. And right now we're in, 20 years almost of a state of emergency and state of war. Well, that's rather outrageous. And part of our problem is that's not been challenged. People have been afraid to say, come on, 20 years? That's just not reasonable. They're afraid politically to be seen as wimps. But they're not challenging it. They need to challenge it because of the Constitution. So right now, people have fiddled with some of these sections of the Patriot Act, but they haven't really done much with them that would do any good. I mean, it's just cosmetic. But right now, what the Trump administration is doing is they're saying, okay, enough of this crap. We're going to go in and we're going to make some very substantial changes. So if they do make substantial changes, it'll start to reel it back in. And for one, I've been writing multiple people, and saying the fusion centers are a problem. They're a Trojan horse. They're saying this is the enemy over here, and then they're attacking everyone but that, and lethally. You don't even begin to know what they're doing. They're hiring people to stalk and harass. They're hiring people to mutilate pets. I mean, it's just the most cruel thing that you can think of. And this is not law enforcement. The Eighth Amendment in our Constitution says that you cannot use cruel and unusual punishment for people you have convicted of crimes. You can't do that to people that you just merely accuse. So we have mobs of people called InfraGard that are run by fusion centers that are using enhanced surveillance, which means stalking, harassment, vandalism, and all kinds of things that only crooks do. And I will say that I realized that the fusion centers were doing this because of the second round of stalking harassment that I received in Florida after I'd left Maryland, because Fort Meade is where NSA is, and where NSA was stalking and harassing me and doing certain things was Maryland. And there was a pattern to it, a very definite pattern. So when I moved almost 1,000 miles away, and several years later when it started again, that same pattern was occurring. It was undeniable. So I knew it was a federal program. And I thought it was, at first I thought only NSA was doing that was NSA's methodology of dealing with whistleblowers. But no, it turns out that it is a national methodology to deal with people that they want on the watch list for whatever reason. Because the first thing is the stalking harassment methodology usually is what starts with people. So they notice strangers and multitudes of strangers doing the same thing. But when they talk to the police say, well, who's doing this to you and why? And they recount, they say, well, it's all kinds of different people. I don't know who they are. And so what they say to begin with mimics paranoia, because you think everybody's out to get you. So the police immediately write somebody off who's reporting very factual stalking harassment techniques, but they're made to make you reporting them sound like paranoia. So that when they start to hit you with gases, poisons, or electronic weapons, you've already been written off. By the time you get the serious stuff that's damaging you and killing you, you've already been written off by the police, and that is the first phase to make sure that you are discounted. And they can do anything they want to you. And no matter what you say, the police are going to say, we're not going to help that person. Waste of time.
Right, right. And so that's a very, very acute description of how this program targets the individual. Now, what's the best way that this program can it be stopped? Either by the courts, the Congress, or the executive in an election year. I mean, can you go to either side at the presidential level and make it a presidential issue? Can you go to the Congress, or is the program that infiltrated in the Congress as well?
Right now, we're seeing that the Republicans are more interested in the FISA abuse and the surveillance abuse than the Democrats, generally speaking. The people who are in the Democratic Party and the Republican Party who lean more for New World Order are less interested than those who are patriots and nationalists. So I have written to, I can't even tell you how many people I've written to. I've written to every governor in every state to alert them to the fact that the fusion centers are frauds. I've written to every attorney general in every state. I have written to all the senators, and I am in the process of sending a letter to each and every one of them. I've got it addressed. I've got a mountain of envelopes, and the letter basically is telling them, do not re-enable the Patriot Act because it's a fraud. So that is ready to send. And I've written to Trump. I have written to certain congressmen who have stood out as defending the Constitution and being extremely concerned about the FISA abuses. I've written to the Department of Justice, the director and the IG. I've written to the FBI director and the IG. I've written again to the National Security Agency. I've written to the director of the National Security Agency, the last two of them. One of them, I sent a 27-page fax to make sure he got it and it wasn't intercepted, delineating not only what had happened to me, but broadening it into the national problem and naming names and naming incidents and naming specific problems. So my approach has been to hit everybody I think cares or should care with letters. And I sign it Karen Melton Stewart, National Security Agency intelligence analyst, retired, so that it gets their attention. I mean, it's not more of a crime because it's hitting me because I had that job. I feel like it's my responsibility, though, since I signed up in the intelligence community, just like you would sign up in the Army or Navy to protect your country. So I'm using the job that I had as an in to get their attention and say, this is happening, because maybe if Mary, who's a college professor, writes in and says this is happening, maybe they won't pay attention to her. But maybe if she writes in and I write in with my intelligence background, maybe they'll say, oh, maybe we need to talk to Karen and Mary, So I'm trying to use that to break down the door, to get our foot in the door, because I've said, when I do some interviews, I'll say, I'm usually introducing the people to this topic, and I'll say, I'm not the only one. Now, if you find this interesting or you find this alarming, I have other people I want you to talk to, because this is not my story. This is our story. This is the world story. This is the United States story. And if we don't stop it now, it'll be our end story.
Now, do you have a presence online that people can go to as a reference at all? I mean, just some place where they can support you or reach you or consult an online reference, or where there are updates on this work?
Well, really, I should have a I should have a site, but I don't. What I have is Facebook, and just been so very busy writing letters and trying to advise and help people who contact me and say, this is happening to me. What do I do? What's going on? So it's kind of half my time is spent trying to help people through this and try to get them on their feet and try to get them shielding tips and other tips. And then the other part of the time, I'm basically writing and researching. So I don't really have a site, which is remiss on my part. I really should.
Well, no. I mean, you have a Facebook site. So if people wanted to contact you either for information or to tell you their stories or suggestions or to enroll in supporting your efforts, do you have a model piece of policy or legislation that you're seeking?
Well, right now, like I said, I am sending this letter that's time sensitive because they're going to be voting on re-upping the Patriot Act March 15th. So right now, I've got all the envelopes stuffed, and I'm waiting to go get postage and send them off. And I am also trying to contact the brand new Director of National Intelligence through a second party to make sure that I've collected an entire envelope full of previous letters that I've written. I've written to the Congressional DO Caucus, the Congressional Directed Energy Weapons Caucus, to tell them that these weapons are being tested on your own citizens, your own innocent people, through the fraud Watchlist. I'm trying to alert them to the fact that they're being played for fools. They think this is all wonderful, great technology to protect the United States. No, it's being used to subjugate the United States. And if they don't have good imaginations, then let me tell them that it could very well be, if you ignore this and say, that's not my problem, that someday somebody's going to come to you and say, we want you to vote yes on this legislation. If you don't, we're going to fry you.
Now, is the party behind subjugating the United States the party that's attempting to bring the one world government and the new world order? Is that pretty much it? Or is it some other? Is it Israel or Russia or China, or who is trying to subjugate the United States now, in your view?
In my view, the New World Order would have come out of Europe, because that traditionally is where that idea has come from. And there are certain companies that are tendrils of that ideology. And a lot of techno companies and contractors and people like that are all for subjugating the world to their will. I mean, look at the terrorist watch list basically has been a boon to contractors because now they have a never-ending war. As soon as they kill a number of people, the innocent people in their own homes, they can load more on the conveyor belt of destruction. And then they have a never-ending supply of quote-unquote terrorists and a never-ending hand in the pocket of government for billions of dollars, if not more, to fund the murder of perfectly innocent people as terrorists. It is a scam.
Well, then why not develop a piece of legislation to end the terrorist watch list?
Well, like I said, I am writing to these people and telling them the whole thing is a scam. I have never written legislation, but I'm hoping for interest back where I can maybe possibly make some suggestions and have experts who do write legislation tell me how it can be written to rein this in. I mean, like I said, right now, the Trump administration has looked at some of the feeble attempts to correct the situation, and they know that it's much worse than some of these senators and congressmen are making it out to be. So they know that these little feeble tweaks, basically, tweak it here and tweak it there, then they know that's not going to do it. So right now they're supposedly writing something much stronger. So we need to see, from our perspective as targeted individuals who are wrongfully and illegally targeted innocent people, we need to see if that's going to fit the bill. And if it doesn't, then we're going to be vocal and tell them. I mean, Judge Trenga of I think it's the Ninth Circuit in Virginia, last September ruled on a court case that was brought by CARE that was saying that, these people, our plaintiffs, have said that they're being abused and mistreated due to the watch list, and they're not told any reason why, and they're having their lives disrupted, et cetera, et cetera. Of course, from what he describes, what they're going through is certainly illegal and unfair, but it's nothing compared to the torture, the 24/7 torture and murder at times of totally innocent people declared terrorists for no particular reason, for no valid reason. So I ended up writing to him and having other people join me in writing and saying, very good that you declared this unconstitutional, but here is what it's actually doing. You're seeing the tip of the iceberg. This is what the program is really doing. So when you demand the government change what they're doing, here is our perspective. We don't have any standing in this, but I wanted to alert him to what was really going on so that maybe it would permeate what he was thinking, and so that he would see that it's not just a little problem, it's a huge problem. And so that might, I hoped, affect his thinking and his demands in regard to what he was telling the government to do to remedy the situation. So I said, all I want is somebody talking about it. I want people talking. I know I don't have standing. I know we don't have standing, but I want them to talk about it and investigate it.
Right. Are you going into 2020, are you more optimistic now that positive changes are going to come, that awareness is going to come around this issue, and that there will be pressure to terminate the Patriot Act, to shut down the fusion centers? Or do you think that the United States is headed toward the New World Order and the globe is headed toward the New World Order?
I personally am hopeful. And I said, I kind of in my heart count on something big happening in 2020. It may not be until the fall. It may take a while, but in my estimation, we're getting there. And certainly we have a lot more hope than we even had 2 or 3 or 4 years ago. So I think we're getting there. It's just a lot slower and a lot more difficult than we had ever imagined. And certainly there are powers that do not want to be revealed. And if you think about it, there are a lot of people who need to go to prison, and a lot of people who, frankly, need to be executed for crimes against humanity, war crimes, treason, conspiracy to torture, conspiracy to murder. There are a lot of people who need some very serious prison sentences, and they need to be executed. Now, one of the things that I've seen is that Trump has started instituting prison changes. He's releasing people who are sentenced to 30 years in prison because they had marijuana and they happen to be black. That's just absolutely ridiculous. But there are some cases like that. So he's finding some of those cases and rectifying it to the best of his ability. He's letting people out of prison who don't need to be there. Well, he's also opening up the prison for people who do need to be there by doing that. Plus, he has already spent millions of dollars upgrading Gitmo. And I've read that they have been telling the people what they want Gitmo to be is long-term, because they plan on certain people going to prison there and staying until they die. So they actually have started to put in facilities to help people they imagine will be elderly and dying there. And there are 3 island high-security prisons that they have upgraded. One is Diego Garcia, one is Gitmo, and the other one I can't think of. It's probably in the Pacific somewhere. And I think they're negotiating to build a 4th one somewhere in the Pacific, but again, I don't remember the name. So our prisons inside the United States are getting kind of emptied out of frivolous people assigned there for just absolute, based on prejudice or stupidity or something like that. So those are being emptied and being readied, I think, for some of the perpetrators who were paid by fusion centers. And fusion centers, by the way, they basically will take the tax money that they're getting and they'll launder it into gift cards. They'll launder it into, let's say they come to a neighborhood and say, oh, you know, Jim Smith over here, we want you to hit his house with a directed energy weapon. All you have to do is put it in your garage, aim it at his home 24/7, and we'll give you X amount of reward. Now, would you like your reward to be a new roof? Would you like it to be a riding lawnmower? Would you like it gift cards? How would you like it? You know, because they are not putting these people as employees. They're funneling money to them. They're laundering the money that is supposed to be used for the fusion center for these snitches. And I've been told, I had a gentleman say, yeah, for it, there are passive people, there are active people, they're assigned to you daily, like you're supposed to follow this guy 4 hours in the morning along with 4 or 5 other people in your cell, okay? And then there are other people in town who they're told if they happen to see you, they're passive snitches. If they happen to see you, say, oh, okay, I saw Karen Stewart at Publix buying bananas at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and they text it into the fusion center or whoever's handling it, and they get $100 put on their account for reporting where you were, when, and what you were doing.
Well, that is that's a classic kind of fascist. It's a classic fascism, but those are certainly violations of the U.S. Constitution, and the Department of Justice and the Inspector General's office should be prosecuting those. Why is that not happening?
Well, they have to admit that there's a crime, and they have to investigate it. We are still trying to get people to investigate, but what it looks like right now is that because these idiots did it to Trump, that brought it to his attention and made it very real for him. Because most of the people say, oh, that would never happen in the United States. That might happen somewhere else, but that would never happen in the United States. And so they brush it aside as being not credible. They don't even investigate it. So what we have here is a president who knows that it is happening or did happen to him. And so if he's got citizens who are contacting him, and believe me, they're writing letters, they're writing emails to the White House saying, this is happening to me. So it echoes what's going on with him. And so he knows something is up. And so what he's got to do is have people investigating. Now we're looking at Durham wanting more money to expand his investigation because he's been quoted as saying it was deeper and broader than he thought. Well, of course, once you get into the targeted individuals who are the bread and butter of the false fusion center system, it is much deeper and broader. In fact, there's a potential that there's at least a couple million people in the United States, judging by the network, the incredibly thorough network that is everywhere, because you can't go from one town to another without it starting again on you. You wouldn't have that type of network for 12 people. They keep adding people to expand this network to get more money to build their private fiefdoms in whatever area they're in. Because here's an example. I went into a Walmart to buy something innocuous, came out and somebody had set up a table saying, we're against bullying and we want to talk to kids in the school about bullying, And I looked at it and I said, well, you know what? The people you really ought to talk to are the fusion center people, because they're really good at bullying people. And I expected them to ask questions or brush me off. And what I got was, you're not the first person who said that to us.
Right. So the word is starting to get out about the fusion centers.
Well, what they're doing is saying, I don't like your shutter colors, so if you don't change them, I'm gonna make sure my people get on you. They are bullies. They are little fascist Nazis, and apparently they're known as that in their own neighborhoods. because they're using their power and their knowledge that they're accountable to nobody to bully their neighbors and other people. So it truly is absolutely out of hand. I mean, it's striking me as Nazi Germany, you know?
Right, right. And so it would seem that either there's a citizen movement against them or some place where citizens can go to report, or there's some champion either in the legislative branch, the Congress, or in the administration, or in the public sphere, some place, some organization, and I guess that you're working toward that end. Is that sort of a fair summary of it?
Well, we don't really have a particular place to go with our complaints is the whole problem.
Right.
So I have encouraged people to write to their senators, their congressmen, the White House, and I've said, the White House has a form where you can fill out an email and send it. I said, use it. And use it daily if you have to. I said, put the names and addresses of the people who are infrared and the ones who are harming you. Put it right there. Send it in. So we are trying to get heard. Is there a particular agency that'll do anything for us? No, not yet. Not yet. Because you know what? They're scared too. Because this type of nonsense has infiltrated everything. In fact, I've heard from a secondhand party, not myself, but a secondhand party has told me that she has had doctors tell her, we know what's being done to you, but we can't record it as such or we'll be in trouble. Because she was getting hit with directed energy weapons and walking in with 2nd and 3rd degree burns.
Right, right. So the executive does have to do something about it. By the executive, you mean it means the president or a legislative oversight. It does have to become a governmental issue.
It has to trickle down because they have infiltrated everything and people are afraid to do their jobs. They're either in it with them and they believe that certain people need to be suppressed and shut up, or they're afraid. They're infiltrated and they know if I speak up about this, my career's over. My life may be over. So it does have to come from the top down. Now, a lot of people have said, well, I want to sue these people. I said, you know what? You're going to have no luck suing them until the administration investigates and starts to acknowledge this is going on, because no lawyer will take that, because he will be either bribed or threatened, and he'll either refuse your case or he'll throw your case, and all your money will be in the toilet. So it's got to be acknowledged from top down for it to stop.
Right, right. We're starting to come to the end of this particular segment. Is there anything that you had wanted to say that you haven't had a chance to bring up yet?
Well, I would be more than happy to send you a copy of the affidavit in regard to how and why I say the fusion centers are behind this on the local level. And of course, you know that the FBI and the DHS are above the fusion centers as far as chain of command. So if anybody would like a copy of that, I will be glad to send it to you. And if anybody wants to join on Facebook, and on my Facebook, Karen Melton Stewart, and then, as I can, I'll answer any questions or direct you to various targeted individual organizations that are trying to not only help people survive, but they are trying, just as I am, to get the word out and to get the public to realize that it's not just us. It's not our problem. Oh, tough luck, No, it's coming for you. This is the method by which they want to subjugate the entire United States. And their message is, if you say one wrong word, we'll be on you like glue, and we will ruin your life. So people have got to know it could be their daughter, it could be their mother, it could be their brother, it could be their uncle. There's no one that it cannot happen to. So everyone is in danger, and people have got to realize that. This is coming for you. It's like looking at an invasion coming across the border and saying, well, they're not here yet, I'm not going to worry about it. No, that's too late when they get to your door. And this is what I'm trying to do when I speak out. I've done, several podcasts. I've been very lucky in the last couple months to actually be on about 4 of them. And I'm trying to tell people the fusion centers are a danger. They are what is basically the weapon that is coming for you. And they are the arm of the New World Order.
Right, right. Could you perhaps, after our program, send me via Skype or email the link to that White House form where people can send their thoughts or their complaints about the Fusion Center?
Absolutely, I will certainly do that.
And any other useful links that you think for people, that'd be great. And of course the link to your Facebook page and all, so people can be in touch. Are there any final words you'd like to leave our viewers with?
Well, I would say, if this is the first time they've heard of it, then in a way they're lucky because they haven't been fretting and stressed out the past several years. I think we are making progress. I think we're on the way to getting it taken care of. I don't think it's necessarily going to be an easy road. I still think we have some bumps ahead and some problems because the deep state does not want this derailed. They just simply don't. But I think it will be at a certain point because there are so very many people trying to get the word out. And like I said, I'm doing podcasts and things to alert the general public as to what this scam is, what this fraud is. And so I think it's getting out and people are starting to realize something. I mean, people have known something's wrong for a long time. But now I'm giving them a definition as to what is wrong and why things are happening the way that they're happening. So I think this helps people defend against it and speak up against it. And the more people speak up against it together, the less likely an individual is going to be targeted, So we do need to stand strong and together. And like I said, I do think we're on the upswing. I think we're going to smash this flat.
Well, thank you very much for this. And we look forward to you perhaps coming on again in the future as events develop in this area. Thank you very much, Karen Melton Stewart. Yeah,
Thank you.